Hello students, myself Pratik Kadam, Assistant Professor, Department of Information Technology, KK Institute of Engineering, Education and Research, Nasik. Welcome to the lecture series on subject Design and Analysis of Algorithm. And our today's topic is Divide and Conquer approach. So let's begin our today's topic with a beautiful quote that is so let's begin our today's video with beautiful quotes by René Descartes. That is, divide each difficulty into as many parts as is feasible and necessary to resolve it. So this quote summarize our today's whole lecture. So let's begin the lecture. So the learning outcomes of our today's lecture is by the end of this video, you'll be able to understand the concept of divide and conquer approach. You'll be able to explain the three stages of divide and conquer approach, and you would be able to write control abstractions of divide and conquer approach. So what exactly is divide and conquer approach? So before getting into the technical details of what exactly is divide and conquer approach, let's try to understand with the help of some real life examples. We all might have heard about the story of bundle of sticks. This is a classic Aesop tale wherein a father gave his quarreling sons a bundle of sticks and asked them to break it over their knees. When they could not do that, he asked them to split the bundle and break the sticks one by one. The story thus ends with the moral, united you are strong, quarreling and separated you are weak. The essential point to note here is that the bundle of sticks could not be broken. However, when it was split, the sticks could be broken individually and joined together at the end. This is exactly the principle that is followed in the divide and conquer approach. Now, let us see one other example. Jack wants to transfer all 45 suitcases from room 1 to room 2 at the same time. The divide and conquer strategy can be applied here. Thus, Jack can divide the suitcase into 15 groups of 3 suitcases each. First, Jack can move one set from room 1 to room 2. The process will be repeated till all the suitcases are transported. The crucial aspect of this scenario is splitting phase. If 45 suitcases are split into 45 individual groups, then there will be 45 moves. On the other hand, if the suitcases are small and they can be divided into a group of more than one suitcases, then Jack can reduce the number of movements between the rooms. Hence, we can conclude that, or we can come to summarize that some relation exists between the size of the sub-problem and the trips required to transfer the suitcases. Now let's see one last example wherein a professor wants to correct 100 papers and he has 4 assistants. A typical way could be split 100 papers into group of 25 papers each, get them corrected by 4 assistants, and finally combine the corrected papers. Thus, if you observe properly, the stages involved here are dividing the papers, correcting them, and finally combining them. If there are more assistants, say 10, then the problem can be solved even faster, as now the 100 papers can be divided into 10 groups. On the contrary, if there is one assistant, the problem is equivalent to solve the original problem of correcting 100 papers individually. I hope now we have understood the basic idea of how exactly the divide and conquer approach work. Now let us see the stages of divide and conquer approach. The first stage is divide, the second one is conquer, and the last one is combine. In design stage, the problem is divided into smaller subproblems. In divide and conquer, the subproblems are similar to original problem with less number of instances. If the subproblems are big, then subproblems are divided further and the process continues till smaller problems are obtained. It's like you can say that when you eat a roti, right? So roti is quite big, so you cannot have the entire roti at one time. So what you do is you divide those roti into parts and then eat it. And the end outcome is that the entire roti is being eaten by you, correct? The second stage is conquer. So in conquer stage, the subproblems can be solved either recursively or non-recursively. And finally, the most important step is the combine. Solutions of the subproblems are combined to get the global result of the original problem, because at the end, our major goal or the important goal is to get the answer to our original problem. So I hope that you have understood the three most important stages of divide and conquer approach, that is divide, conquer and combine. So now let us try to understand the working principle of divide and conquer algorithm. So if you see here, initially we have a problem. That problem is divided into two parts, that is subproblem. Those subproblems are further divided into two parts, and that subproblem is further divided into two parts. So you can see that we keep on dividing our original problem into two parts unless we get a subproblem which is small enough to be solved. After that, you can see the initial stage is divide. Then we have a conquer stage. In conquer stage, we provide a solution to the subproblem. And once we find a solution to the all subproblems, we try to combine them. So you can see here the two subproblems are combined. Further, they are combined together, and finally we get a solution to our original problem. So here, if you observe that subproblems are similar to the original problem with smaller arguments. Hence, such problems can be easily solved using recursion. When subproblem hits to the smallest possible size, it is solved and the results are recursively combined to generate a solution of the original bigger problem. Divide and conquer is a multi-branch, top-down recursive approach. You can see here each branch indicates one subproblem and it calls itself with the smaller argument. For understanding and designing a divide and conquer algorithm, one needs to be very skillful and should have a good reasoning capability. The reason is because if you are not able to find out to what extent you need to keep on dividing your subproblem, you won't be able to find out the efficient solution to the divide and conquer approach. So normally in an examination, there is a question that you need to write a control abstraction of a divide and conquer approach. So what exactly is the control abstraction? A control abstraction is a procedure whose flow of control is clear, but whose primary operations are specified by other procedures whose precise meanings are left undefined. So let's see how we can write a control abstraction of a divide and conquer approach. So if you observe this is somewhat similar to your pseudocode. You can see it is a little bit of combination of pseudocode and your algorithm. So the control abstraction here is we are calling a divide and conquer function wherein the parameter is p, that is the problem. It says that if small p, then return sp. Here, small p is a boolean value function which determines whether the input size is small enough so that the answer can be combined without splitting it. And if the problem size is small, function s is invoked. If the problem size is not small, you can see that we divide p into smaller instances, then apply divide and conquer to each of the subproblems, and finally we return the combination, that is we return the combine function wherein it returns the solution to the each subproblem which is combined to get the final answer. So if the problem is not small enough, we can see that the problem P is further divided into subproblems. These subproblems P1, P2 up to Pk are solved by recursive application of divide and conquer approach. Now let us see what could be the recursive relation of divide and conquer approach. So recursive relation of divide and conquer approach is T of n equals to G of n when n is small and twice T of n by 2 plus f of n otherwise. So here twice T of n by 2 is nothing but the cost of dividing your problem into two parts, right? So here T of n is the time for divide and conquer approach with n inputs. G of n is the time to compute the answer directly for the small inputs, and your f of n is the time for divide and combine. So I hope now you would be able to write a control abstraction of divide and conquer approach by yourself. It is not mandatory that you have to write it in this way. You can write it in your own way, but the logic should remain the same. Now that we have understood divide and conquer approach, let's see what are the advantages and disadvantages of divide and conquer approach. Starting with advantages. So divide and conquer approach is efficient compared to your brute force approach. So in the last lecture we have studied about the brute force approach wherein we try each and every possible combinations, right? So you can see for the input size of n in brute force approach we have to compute for n times, but in your divide and conquer approach you are dividing your problem into two parts, right? Now let's go to second advantage, supports parallelism. So aligned with your first advantage, we can see that as we can divide your problem into two parts and your sub problems are independent, we can solve them parallelly, right? So this is how we can see that divide and conquer approach is more efficient in terms of time compared to your brute force algorithm. Now let's see the disadvantages. Most of the problems that we solve with the help of divide and conquer approach uses recursion, and due to this, recursion makes it slower because we need to maintain the stack. Apart from this, memory management is also high because we make multiple recursive calls and we need to make sure that whatever recursive call, whatever is the output, we need to maintain it properly. And apart from this, as I've told you, choosing base case is a limitation. As we have discussed earlier, for a person to write a very good and efficient divide and conquer approach algorithm, he needs to be logically strong and should have a good reasoning skills, because it is very important how you select the base case, right? So if you remember in the initial example wherein we have to check 100 papers, right? So, or we might take the other example of 45 suitcases, wherein if you don't group these suitcases in a proper way, let's say 3 or a 5, then only you can reduce the number of shifting that you're doing from room 1 to room 2, right? If you divide your sub problem up till 1, then again it is like you have to move each back from one room to the another, right? So that does not give you the proper solution. Hence, choosing the base case is very important. So now let us see a few applications of divide and conquer approach. One of the best example would be finding the exponential of a number, right? So now let's say try to compute 2 raised to 10, right? So you keep on multiplying 2 10 times, right? So it is quite tedious. It is easy that 2 raised to 10, but let's say I have to do 2 raised to 52 or 2 raised to 152. So that becomes very high. But what we can do is we can divide that big problem into smaller problems which are independent. For example, let's say 2 raised to 10 we can divide it as 2 raised to 5 into 2 raised to 5. 2 raised to 5 can be further divided as 2 raised to 2 into 2 raised to 3. Correct? Now that problems look very small and we can solve it and combine the answer. Similarly, we can apply the divide and conquer approach to multiplying large numbers, then multiplying numbers using Stratson's algorithm, then sorting problems, searching problems, min-max problem, that is finding out the minimum and the maximum from the given set of numbers, and discrete Fourier transform. So I hope that now you have got a brief idea about what exactly is a divide and conquer approach. You have understood the stages, that is the divide, conquer and combine. We have also seen the advantages, disadvantages, the working flow and the control abstraction. So this is a small homework question for you, that is, what is the time complexity of searching an element in an array of size n using brute force and using divide and conquer approach? So please comment in the comment box your answers. I'll check it and reply to you whether your answers are correct or wrong. Thank you for your patience listening. Have a great day. And please stay tuned for the further videos on subject design analysis of algorithm.